Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth annual Penn Nursing and Penn Medicine Nursing Story Slam event, generously supported by Penn Nursing alum Sandy Sandberg and her husband, Joe Sandberg. I'm Marian Leary, Director of Innovation at Penn Nursing. We were sure hoping to be together in person tonight, but once again, that was not to be. But not to worry, these stories are so captivating, it's going to feel like we are all together. The theme for tonight's show is creativity. Creativity is defined as the use of imagination, the ability to create meaningful ideas, and the capacity to transcend traditional rules, patterns, and relationships. Creativity is what nurses do every day. Nurses use their creativity at the bedside, in the classroom, in the research lab, out in the community, and everywhere they work and practice. And recently, nurses have had to be more creative than ever. And tonight, you will hear how nurses have used that creative prowess to enhance the work they do every day. Before we kick off this event, our Dean of Penn Nursing, Dean Villarreal, would like to say a few words. Dean Tony?
Thank you, Marion, for that introduction, and thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. The Story Slam has quickly grown into one of the highlights of the year for me. Hearing the experience of students, nurses, nurse scientists, and midwives, as well as people who know nurses well, tell their truths in the spotlight. It is truly a moment of magic. It is a moment when the definition of what a nurse is truly revealed. Those of us who have spent our lives in the healthcare field know that nurses defy expectations every day. We are often more than what many in the public might envision. Certainly, some of the storytellers who tell their truths tonight will demonstrate the depth and breadth of the creativity that nurses must embrace in order to care for others. Poet Emily Dickinson once wrote a poem called "I Dwell in Possibility." While the poem is about the act of writing, it speaks of the joy of creativity and the reward that it brings. Nurses, too, dwell in possibility, and the reward for creativity in healthcare, our healthcare community, for the world. That creativity may save one life, or it may save hundreds of lives, even millions. I look forward to hearing tonight's storytellers speak of their creativity in their work. I'd also like to take this time to thank Marion Leary, whose own creativity and resolve helped launch this Story Slam event several years ago. Thank you also to First Person Arts, the Penn Biotech Commons 3D Printing Lab, Penn Medicine, my fantastic Penn Medicine Chief Nursing Officers, as well as Joe and Sandy Sandberg for their part in making the Story Slam possible. And of course, thank you to our storytellers. I know you will do great. And remember, you're among family and friends. I urge all of you joining us tonight to stay connected to Penn Nursing via our website and newsletter. And I can share 125 million reasons to do so, including finding out about the other exciting upcoming events. But for tonight, I hope you will enjoy the 4th annual Story Slam. I know I will. Thank you. Marion?
Thank you, Dean Tony. So tonight you're going to hear 7 stories from Penn Nursing and Penn Medicine nurses that epitomize creativity. Our storytellers have worked tirelessly over the past 6 weeks on their stories, writing and rewriting, practicing, and getting sage feedback from our collaborator for this event, First Person Arts. First Person Arts is a Philadelphia nonprofit that celebrates the power of the personal. I want to thank all of our storytellers for that hard work and for sharing their stories with each of us tonight. Each storyteller will receive this nifty 3D printed microphone trophy, thanks to the Penn Biotech Commons Library. They support this event each year with these really cool 3D printed microphones. To our storytellers, I know you are all going to do amazing tonight. Your stories are going to make us laugh. They're going to make us cry. And so audience members, make sure to grab some tissues and get set for a great event. With that, I'd like to invite up my friend and colleague, Neil Bardhan from First Person Arts, who will be emceeing this event. Neil, take it away.
Thank you so much, Marion. I'm Neil Bardhan. I'm the Director of Applied Storytelling at First Person Arts based in Philadelphia. First Person Arts helps individuals, groups, and organizations develop true personal stories into art for the stage, the page, on air, online, and for personal growth. We do this because true stories have the power to connect us. And I think you're going to see exactly what that looks like tonight. I'm very excited for tonight's show. This event series means a lot to me and my colleagues, and I'm really honored to be here with you all virtually. I'm going to introduce each storyteller. They'll tell their story, and then after that, I'll chat with them for a minute to learn a little bit more and share with you all. Our first storyteller is Victoria Squiccerini from the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. Her happy place, she tells me, is almost anywhere in Italy. Welcome, Victoria. Take it away.
Sometimes it's hard for me to believe that I'm a nurse. Working in healthcare was not my childhood dream. Even as an adult, even just 10 years ago, I would never have pictured myself working in a hospital, taking care of patients. All I ever wanted to do my whole life is play the piano. I dreamed of being a concert pianist. I wasn't a prodigy. In fact, I'm not even really that talented, but I worked really hard. I practiced and I studied, and I created a life for myself as a professional musician that I really loved. And then about 10 years ago, my then husband was diagnosed with cancer. And I stayed with him throughout his surgeries. And I watched the nurses day and night. I watched everything they did. I watched them suction his trach and empty his drains. And as I watched them, all I could think was, I could never be a nurse. I actually said it out loud to Mark, the night nurse, as he was doing wound care. I had to look away. I was so queasy. And I said, I could never do that. I could never be a nurse. And he turned to me and he said, yeah, you could. But I did not believe him. But I kept watching. And the more I watched these nurses, the more I admired them. Not just for what they were doing, but for who they were being. I thought, what an extraordinary life to be a nurse. And 2 years later, I went back to that same unit as a nurse, working alongside Mark and the others who inspired me. Now, going from making music to taking care of patients is a huge jump. I mean, they're two wildly different careers, but to me, they're strikingly similar. Both require mastering a particular body of knowledge and skill, but it's the way in which those skills are implemented that makes a great performance or excellent nursing care. When I was a kid, my teacher used to take me to concerts, and sometimes we would hear a perfect performance, just impeccable playing. And afterwards, she would say, well, he was a very good boy. He played all the right notes, but it was clear she was not impressed. And then we'd hear another pianist and she'd say, I could write a whole symphony on all the wrong notes he played. And then she'd go on and on about how wonderful it was. And as a kid, this was very confusing for me because I was working so hard just to get the right notes. It took me a really long time to learn that that's just the foundation. And a truly great performer doesn't just present their skill on stage. They use their skill to connect with the audience. And it's the same with nursing. I can do nursing using just scientific knowledge and clinical skills, but that's just nursing science. It's task-oriented nursing. The art of nursing requires human connection, and not just for the benefit of the patient. That connection is essential to the well-being of the nurse. At the start of the pandemic, I got a call one night from my boss. He said, I just wanted to let you know that tomorrow you're going to be in charge on the COVID unit. I didn't get much sleep that night. I just lay there thinking about how unprepared and unqualified I was. And those feelings were very familiar. I knew that anxiety and dread because at a certain point in my career as a musician, I developed performance anxiety. I'm not talking about regular healthy nerves. I mean crippling stage fright. I would stand backstage before a performance staring at the piano, just willing for some catastrophe to get me out of there. Like maybe the back leg will break off and I won't have to play. It's terrible to dread the thing that you love, the thing that you've worked so hard for. Back then, I tried everything. I tried meditation and yoga and visualization, and nothing worked until finally I took a course that my teacher recommended. And it had me really examine how I was being. And afterwards, I was sharing with a friend everything I discovered about being perfect. And I'll never forget his reaction. He said, "You can't swoop in like Superman and play all the right notes at warp speed. The audience just wants to fall in love." And that image stuck with me. It changed everything. The next time that I performed, I looked out at the audience and I got that they're just a bunch of people who love music just like me. I never dreaded playing again. And I don't give concerts now, but I do play chamber music whenever I can. And I love it because it's all about sharing and connecting. And that's what was missing for me in those early days on the COVID unit. I was just trying to survive each shift. I wasn't connecting with my patients. And no wonder it's not easy to connect through all that protective gear. I realized that I would have to intentionally make that connection. So now when I take care of these patients, I just take the time to be with them for a bit. I hold their hand. I say their name, even if they can't hear me. And if it's scary, then we get to be scared together. When the pandemic started, the world wanted to make us heroes, but I don't have superpowers. I can't swoop in and give a perfect performance, and I can't swoop in and save lives. I'm not a hero. I'm just a person who loves being a nurse.
Thank you so much, Victoria. And I really appreciate your story. And I'm glad you kicked things off tonight with this really beautiful story. I have a question. You're talking about how it's a skill and art to connect with others. And I can certainly appreciate that in the work that I do. But are there exercises you think that folks can do to practice that art, whether they're nurses, pianists, storytellers, or some other field entirely?
Absolutely. I mean, I've done exercises with the nurses on my unit where we just be with each other. We just sit there, and you've probably done this as an actor. You just sit there and be with each other, staring into each other's eyes, and people start laughing and some people start crying. But it really does help you to get that. Often we don't look in our patients' eyes. We're so busy with all these tasks, and
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference. They actually end up feeling like you've spent a long time with them just because you're looking at them.
Yeah, powerful. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Victoria.
Thank you.
All right. Our next storyteller tonight is Raven Aponte from Penn School of Nursing. She tells me that her happy place is parties at home in Miami with friends, family, and lots of food. She emphasized lots of food. Welcome, Raven.
Thank you, Neil. All right. Have you ever had a bad hair day? And I'm not talking about that trim that really turned into a cut. I have a story to tell, and it's not about my bad hair day, but a few interesting hair years. You see, growing up, I had a unique relationship with my hair. Based on my hairstyles, you could always tell my mood or what I was going through. At age 7, I got a fungal rash on my scalp called tinea corporis, or as I heard it at that time, tiny corpse. And because of those red, scaly, and itchy, and I mean very itchy patches, I was left with no choice but to shave my hair bald. By age 11, my mom was working 2 jobs, so that meant I had to learn how to do my own hair. And to make it easy, I got a relaxer to make my hair more straight and more manageable. And then by age 18, when I got to college, I wanted a fresh start. And I did the big chop, which meant cutting off all the relaxer, where I was now left with my natural hair. So for the next few years, I tried every style I could find on YouTube. I wore afros, kinky twists, braids, and bantu knots. And indeed, I also spent those college years experimenting with chemicals, hair chemicals at least. On the weekends, I conjured up hair butters and creams in my apartment, and without any complaints from my roommates, the light chocolate buttery scent of cocoa butter and coconut oils spread throughout our small college dorm. In these moments, I felt free because for centuries, Black women have had to hide their hair and still do, might I add, because of discrimination and racism. Yet here I was, a Black woman in the 21st century celebrating my crown and glory. I really felt a sense of freedom. This freedom lasted until I got to nursing school. As a second degree nursing student, under the veil of professionalism and infection control, I was indoctrinated into what a nurse should look and act like. And I guess I was supposed to look like Florence Nightingale, and I just didn't get the memo. My big puffy hair was supposed to be pulled back and out of the way, and never in a style that could attract too much attention to myself and away from my skills as a nurse. So my signature style became this military style bun. And of course, when it got time to apply for a job, my mom questioned me. You know those questions your parents ask you and they already have the answer to? She asked me, "So, what are you going to do with your hair?" And I knew not to risk being perceived as threatening or doing too much. So guess what? I wore the military style bun. And on February 18th, 2018, I started my first day as an ICU nurse. And as one of the few Black nurses on the unit, I did everything to fit into the unit culture, which really meant acclimating to the already set standards by people who probably didn't look like me. And if you've been in an ICU, you know there's this rhythmic aura of chaos with beeping and humming of machines helping patients breathe, eat, and heal. And I'm lots of routine. The ICU thrives on routine. And this same routine is also how I survived on the unit. So all of this may seem pretty uneventful, but here's where the drama actually starts. In a desire to connect with my colleagues and fit in, I signed up to work an overtime shift. And of course, they called me in. And this is really where nurse burnout starts, but that's a story for another day. But here's the actual problem. I spent the day at my friend's house, and of course, I bought everything I needed for work because I knew I would be called in that night. So as I was checking all my materials for work, ID check, stethoscope check, snacks check, water check. But then I realized something was missing. All of my hair products and tools were sitting in a bag in my apartment, which was 30 minutes away from my friend's house. So to avoid being late for work, I had to show up to work as is, not in a military style bun, but in a big puffy afro. And just to help you picture it, just imagine a Black Panther activist, hair like cotton candy, and a pair of royal blue scrubs. When I got to my unit and I walked up to the two double doors and they opened, I felt like I was walking onto the red carpet, ready to do this big reveal. All eyes were on me, wondering, who the heck is this girl? And of course, the questions and stares came rolling in. Bad hair day, huh? Can I touch it? How'd you get it to stand up like that? And I'm thinking to myself, what? This is me, or at least the raven I was hiding for the past year. As I hid from the stares and questions, I glued myself to the computer in my patient's room. I thought I was free from all the commentary and stares. But it wasn't until 1 a.m. where my patient decided she actually was going to have the last word. My patient, a 7-year-old Black girl who spent well over 6 months on our unit, and she was labeled as somewhat difficult, really because she wouldn't talk to anyone besides her parents, when in reality, she was just shy and didn't recognize the faces that contrasted this world that she had come to know. Anyways, so as I'm hanging her medication in the IV pole at the head of her bed, I hear some shuffling, and I think to myself, all right, what do you got to say about my hair now? But I actually feel a little tug on my pant leg, and she whispers, "We have the same hair. It's like we're twins," with this sleepy grin on her face. In that moment, I realized I was hiding a piece of myself for acceptance, when this is what actually connected me with patients. And while not many nurses on my unit looked like me, caring in my most authentic form was necessary, as it created a space where patients and families could see themselves and connect with someone who looked like them, but also had similar values, cultural practices, upbringings, and often understood the nuances of their life that get written off as difficult or non-compliant. So for the next few months, under the guise of continuity of care, she became my twin, for lack of a better word, because we always had to make sure we had the same matching hairstyles. And as I started to wear my hair out and experimenting with different styles, while they seemed like different styles to me, I think my patient saw me as her daily cartoon character. If I had 2 braids, I was Dr. McStuffins. If I had 2 buns, I was Princess Leia. And if it was straight, I was Elsa from Frozen. With the support of my coworkers, I eventually became the hairdresser of the unit. We created a drawer with a variety of hair products and accessories, and we dedicated time during our shifts to braid, twist, and brush our patients' hair into any style they wanted, while at the same time assessing for emotional status, skin, speech, and their overall patient well being. So you see, nursing calls for a diverse workforce, but what exactly does that mean? How are we welcoming these differences beyond the mission statement? Do hairstyles, tattoos, disabilities, accents make us any less of a nurse? Or do they create a bridge to connect with patients and each other? For me, it was this creativity that rose out of these unique hairstyles that added the intensity to intensive care nursing. Thank you.
Ah, Raven, thanks so much. There's so many lines in that just get me every time I hear it. So thanks again for sharing publicly this
Thank
time.
you.
Yeah. Also, congratulations on your work anniversary this week. It sounds like you said February 18th,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Glad I caught that. Question for you. Are there other ways that you've let yourself be you more than you might have been a couple years ago, to build bridges, as you put it?
I think for me, I've opened myself to like sharing stories about my life. Because I think a lot of times in nursing, you're talking with your coworkers, but you're like, I don't want to talk about that. Like, I don't know what they'll think about me. But I think now I'm like, I just share the stories and what my life is like, because I think it helps other nurses realize, like, oh, my patient may be like this nurse. And if I didn't share that story, who knows if they would have been exposed to that. So I think even in just conversations, opening up, the real parts of my life.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks so much, Raven.
Thank you.
All right. Kay Kinsey is our third storyteller tonight. She's an alum from the School of Nursing. Kay's happy place is springtime in her garden picking peonies. Just loved the poetry of that when she shared it with me. Please welcome Kay Kinsey.
Hi, I'm not a natural storyteller, yet my story about making something from nothing needs to be told. Since childhood, I've been fascinated by folklore, improbable yet possible. A favorite, stone soup. How does a stranger convince others that a stone in a pot of warm water makes a tasty soup? For centuries, people have believed and add ingredients. All feast, learning something from nothing gives hope for better times. There are so many stone soups. My favorite is Daisy Duck making button soup, outfoxing her miserly Uncle Scrooge and feeding all the other Disney characters. Reflecting on my clinical practice as a public health nurse, I slowly learned how to make stone soups, offering people hope and health. It's magical to cook something up and feed a crowd. Many times, a recipe starts with what clients said or did not say during home visits. Their stories, secrets, fears, assume nothing that could change. I parked my agendas and assumptions, listening even to silence. The essence of nursing, no matter the setting. If you listen, change happens, and those you care for and about will take charge of their everyday lives. Stone soup recipes can start another way, from a profound experience you relive and never want to happen to others. One day, walking to my car, I noticed a young man strolling across the street. At the car, I tossed my purse on the passenger seat, sensed someone behind me, turned. The same person I just saw, pointing a handgun at me, demanding, "Give me your purse or I will kill you." Looking straight in his eyes, I blurted, "I can't believe you're doing this to a nurse." "You're a nurse, just give me your money." I handed over what I had in my pocket. He took off with 2 tea bags and a $10 bill. A month later, he was apprehended. Just turned 18, extensive juvenile record of robbing neighbors, shoppers, me, burglarizing homes, dealing drugs. As a victim and witness, I was so unprepared and fearful about the torturous steps to a trial. Then reality hit. I'm angry, not afraid, and I surprisingly cared about this kid. His fate, where's his family? Why are lives so fractured? Nothing in this community prevents children from growing up to be violent criminals. How could I concoct a soup preventing such end results? A spark of an idea I knew it had to do with inner city mothers and their children. Over the years, fine soups are added to the Stone Soup Cookbook, but the finest recipe of all ever made, based on that spark, began 2 decades ago. It still takes my breath away. I had the honor and challenge of creating such a rich, enduring soup for Philadelphia families to be safer, smarter, stronger. In 2001, the health department, although they did not know this, called for a very special stone soup to address high rates of child abuse, neglect, and youth violence. The core ingredients: public health nurses and staff, person-centered in-home care, and the mother-baby home visit program, Nurse-Family Partnership, NFP. Time to name that recipe, heat up the soup, hire nurse home visitors, serve to pregnant parenting mothers their babies until age 2. Witness what happens. Today, more than 6,000 mothers and families have been served. Mothers healthier, finished school, employed, reached life goals. Their children brighter, preschool ready, far less involved in child welfare or justice systems. Meaningful data points. But what families and nurses say give me bragging rights. Moms and families are the best recruiters ever for others to savor the NFP stone soup. What they share is food for the soul. And I, with their consent, share their voices with you. I will always remember my nurse. I learned to trust someone who listened and respected me. As grandma, I opened my door to a stranger who is now part of our family. My NFP baby is in college. It took a long time to believe in myself. She is my guiding star. And I just wanted to be like my nurse. And I'm an NFP nurse now, too. Nurses who stir and serve the soup to moms and babies are special. They're inspired, reflective about their public health practice. It is like evaporated milk. You dilute and add it to the NFP soup. Their voices. I thought about quitting, leaving nursing completely, and then I found this public health job. Families teach me, and so want to be loving, prepared parents. I learned how to parallel park. Yay. Moms taught me street savvy. I love NFP and working in this community. Graduation time. She will sail off, the winds in her sails, charting her own course. The original NFP stone soup simmers on, truly 24/7 labor of love. As our community adds spices, civil law attorneys, childhood educators, it has different flavors than the startup. It's time for a new recipe, perhaps alphabet soup. Now you know who I am and what I do. I make stone soups to keep people thriving out of hospitals, jails, and communities healthier. And together we can make magical stone soups from nothing.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kay. I have to say, when I first learned of NFP a couple of years ago, I was just really blown away by what the model is, how it works today, and the impact. So thank you for that. You talk about like listening and change a good amount, and in fact, you said if you listen, change happens, which is a quote that I'm going to use from now on. What are some ways that you think people should be listening more and looking for where they can create change?
Well, I always thought you needed to fill your space with your voice, but sometimes that's just chatter.
Mm.
And sometimes it's just being a quiet, attentive individual. Everywhere in society in particular, our minds get so cluttered, we're so filled with things, including, everything that's on the computer these days. But when you work with people, particularly if they're in their space, which is their home, sometimes it's just really good. I think it's very positive for everyone just to be present.
Yeah.
And I think it's something you learn to appreciate as you grow older, that being present is more important sometimes than telling someone what to do or how to do it, or make them feel like they need to do something.
Wonderful. Yeah, I like the connection there also with what Victoria and I were talking about, is that sometimes the simple act of being present does so much, but people don't always give it the time or the recognition that it deserves. So great. Kay, thanks so much for sharing your story with us tonight. All right, our next storyteller is Christine Triciani from Princeton Health. Christine and her husband ended their wedding ceremony with the theme from their favorite TV show, The Office. Love that choice. Please welcome Christine.
Thank you. It was a little over a year into my brand new career as a nurse when it happened. I stood in front of my open refrigerator, sobbing. Lemon chicken in one hand, taco meat in the other. Uncontrollably, I sobbed as the decision of what to have for dinner that night became a catalyst, setting off this domino chain-like reaction of emotions that would not stop spilling out. I felt my husband wrap his arms around me and try to pull me into his chest, but initially I pushed him away. I was terrified to be that close to him. Instead, I allowed fear to engulf my mind in a series of what ifs. What if I hadn't cleaned myself off enough in the shower at the end of my shift that evening? What if I somehow passed the virus on to him? What if I was stuck making heart-wrenching decisions for my loved ones when I couldn't even decide what leftovers to have for dinner? I had spent so long allowing these thoughts and fears and emotions to be pushed down, and this pressure to build and build and build, and finally it burst. The camel's back was broken, and in it came the knowledge that I too was broken. I was broken. But with that realization, the weight of expectations that I had placed upon myself was lifted, and I was able to replace it with this inner sense of peace. And that peace allowed me to return the warm embrace of my husband. And then it allowed me to just let him decide what we had for dinner that night. And slowly, I began to share with him all the horrible things I had experienced during the first month of the COVID-19 pandemic. And he listened, and he did his best to understand. And for the moment, that was good enough. But the next day I was back at it again, and I was sitting at the nursing station next to another nurse on my unit, and I could feel in the air that she wasn't herself. I mean, none of us really were at this point, but today she couldn't hide it from me. Her usual sweet and kind demeanor was just replaced with this intense stare at her charting, and she was all too quiet. So I paused for the moment, trying to come up with the most genuine way to ask her how she was doing. But when I opened my mouth, I just blurted out, "So I sobbed into my refrigerator last night." And she turned with her sweet self and looked at me, completely confused, in a way that most people would have been utterly embarrassed, and tried to avoid her for maybe the rest of the shift, pretending nothing happened, and maybe just the next couple shifts after that, or forever never talk to her again. But instead, that same domino chain-like reaction of emotions happened again, but this time with words. And I told her how the decision of what leftovers to eat became so incredibly overwhelming, I found myself sobbing instead. And I had this theory that it had nothing to do with dinner at all, that it was just the final thing after all of this that broke me. And the pause that followed, having spoken the words aloud to her, was filled with such relief. I had done it again. I allowed the emotions and the feelings and the words to come out instead of pushing them down. But in that moment, I had offered her an invitation to a safe space to do the same. And she did. She told me she had a fight with her boyfriend. She had just wanted to remind him to stop leaving the lights on, and the next thing she knew, she was yelling at him. She said she felt like she didn't even recognize herself lately. The silence that followed her confession felt as warm as the embrace my husband had given me the night before. Reassurance, validation, company. I understand, I said. Believe it or not, I don't usually cry while holding lemon chicken in my kitchen. The humor broke the tension of the moment completely, and we were together in being more than just nurses on the COVID-19 unit. We were together on that emotional roller coaster. We had each other. We were not alone. It was that moment that gave me the idea. We needed more of this. Nurses needed validation that we could only give each other, no matter how hard our loved ones and everyone else was trying. We were all scared. We were all grieving. A lot of us were angry. But we were all going through the motions while under the surface, we were pushing these feelings and these thoughts and these fears down and allowing that pressure to build and build and build. But what if we could diffuse that ticking pressure before it burst? What if we could provide nurses with a safe outlet for these emotions? Could we prevent nurses from having these emotional breakdowns? Could we normalize nurses expressing their feelings? What should have been a simple decision of what leftovers to have for dinner showed me just how damaging leftover emotions can be. And that's what started my journey to create what is now known as the RN Wellness Committee. We are a group of nurses dedicated to ensuring the well-being of our fellow nurses is optimal. Together, we promote mental health resources and wellness initiatives. And together, we remind nurses, you are not alone. We are all here for you. Nurses no longer have to cry by themselves in the kitchen or hide in that false sense of comfort that comes with suppressing your emotions. Instead, they can reach out to a member of our team, and we can share in a newfound comfort of the safe space that we create together.
Love it. Thank you so much, Christine. Feels like,
Thank you.
again, you're connecting to these other stories in so many different ways and bringing it really to a contemporary level. Something I was wondering is, what are some of the wellness resources that are on your radar that you're looking to bring in, or that you don't know how to bring in yet, but you'd love to get them to your team?
Well, we're fortunate enough to have so many wellness resources on hand just through Penn Medicine.
Great.
We have a great employee assistance program. We have wonderful chaplain services. Penn Cobalt is a great resource for us as well. And even our very own community wellness program offers so much for the community that our nurses take part in. I've been connected with some resources through Rutgers University because we are Princeton, located in New Jersey. They have a great nurse-to-nurse peer support that we've been working to integrate more in case there's those nurses out there that don't feel comfortable going through where they work. Everybody requires something different when it comes to their mental health and their self-care. And I'm lucky and fortunate enough to work for such a great place that provides those opportunities and says, hey, we know you're individualized. Let's find something that works for you.
Great. Really wonderful recognition. Christine, thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're now going to take a 5-minute intermission. Stretch your legs, think about your own stories of creativity or your own stories of connection. And we'll see you back here in 5 minutes. Hello, welcome back from intermission. We're going to get started in a minute here with our second set of storytellers for tonight's Story Slam. Do want to shout out that we have viewers tuning in from all over the world. People showing up in the comments saying that they're from Philly, New York, Connecticut. Got somebody in from South Korea, apparently. It's just a great reminder that stories connect all of us wherever we are, and that hearing people's stories can help us understand each other so much better. Kicking off our second set of the night is Elaine Seelan from the School of Nursing. Elaine says hello to all the former Institute nurses who are watching. Thought they'd appreciate that. Take it away, Elaine.
Thank you, Neil. As nurses gain knowledge and experience, we inherently begin to fill our toolboxes with tricks, tried and true methods, and assortment of skills from which we resort to when the need arises. However, there are those times when digging into the recesses of our brains, looking for that certain gizmo, that whatchamacallit, that thingamajig, that we find nothing but air. Mental health nurses are called upon to come up with imaginative and creative resources to inspire change. These stories bring to light our work, and along with it, the discovery of those doohickeys. Decades ago, and I mean many, many decades ago, inpatient psychiatric treatment rendered weeks, months, and sometimes even years long treatment. Matt arrived to our young adult unit in a catatonic state. Once a 6'8" high school all-state football hero with an adoring, although fractured family, he was the life of the party, never without a girlfriend, usually a cheerleader. But now he hardly moved any part of his body, including his bowels. And despite severe abdominal pain that comes with severe constipation, he held his stance for days, sometimes longer than that. The typical treatment used to address this condition rendered no results, none, zero, zilch. On at least one occasion, maybe more, we had to resort to manual methods, and I won't even go there. One day, after giving him a milk and molasses and a mayest, we actually thought that was creative back then, I was stood outside his bathroom door doing my usual encouraging routine. "You're causing yourself so much pain, Matt. Just let go." But the results were the same. Recalling his years as a football player, it occurred to me that maybe cheerleading might inspire him. "Matt, you can do it. You can do it. 2, 4, 6, 8. Let's see you defecate. Score!" With some rah-rahs in between, I did my best version of a cheerleader, kicking my legs and jumping up and down. Other staff members heard the commotion, saw what I was doing, and joined in. And what do you know? Well, let's say we scored, and Matt, let's just say he went all the way to the end zone. Many of our young adult women self-mutilated, cutting their arms and legs with whatever implement they could find to lacerate themselves. Typically, our approach was not to respond with any reaction, actually a non-reaction, as to minimize what we called secondary gain of getting attention for self-harming. We would tend to the lacerations, clean the wounds, apply bandages, in more severe cases, taking them to the emergency department for suturing. One of my patients, Evie, was found to be cutting a forearm, yet again, using the end of a paper clip, rendering multiple bleeding scratches. I had escorted her to the treatment room and began the typical assessment and treatment process. But unlike most, Evie seemed to take an interest in how her wounds would be treated. "How are you going to clean it?" she asked. "Gee, I'm glad you're interested. You can assist me in taking care of your wounds." Here was her opportunity to reverse course, to be part of the healing, not just the hurting. I guided her through the process of assessing the wounds, cleaning, and then dressing the injured areas. In the days that followed, she would continue her own wound care, and even excited when seeing her arm, once lacerated, begin to heal. By changing her role from a passive recipient of care, she began ownership and active participant in her wellness, in her recovery process. Evie helped us develop a new model for caring for those who self-harmed. Not all our creative efforts worked out so well. Leslie was studying art at a local college. He had a mostly manic, depressive condition. And upon arriving to the unit, he would proudly announce, "I'm here for my annual tune-up." And that was pretty much the case, stopping his medications and sliding into a full-blown manic state, which led him back to the hospital frequently. On this admission, he begged us to let him continue his art projects while he was tuning up, as he called it. "I'll even take my meds," as if this was his bargaining chip. Wanting to support his creative juices and thinking that this was a productive avenue for his manic energy, we agreed to let him bring in his supplies. Little did we know that working with the combination of water and plaster of Paris, would he successfully cement the bathroom pipes in his room and all the other bathrooms below. Creativity in working with those experiencing mental health challenges requires a critical component to making the endeavors effective, and that is the active participation of those in our care. With their immediate feedback, we are able to refine our practices like polishing a fine new tool. Over the years, many of those special individuals contributed to keeping my toolbox full, and for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you.
Elaine, thank you so much for being a storyteller with us tonight. I love this set of stories and what ties them together. And I know that you have other stories like this as well along these lines. I've heard a few. Here's my question for you. If you
Okay.
were to write a book or create a course based on case studies like this, what would you title that book or course and why?
Oh my God, you put me on the spot here, Neil. Sometimes people think of the word crazy as a bad word.
Mhm.
So, it comes to mind, but I don't think people would understand. Maybe in and out of all those years. Something.
Ooh. Oh, that's intriguing. Yeah, I love that. And I love the lesson there of how much the active participation can really help in recovery. Super lesson for folks.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.
All right, we've got Sue Kreiness coming up next. She's from the Chester County Hospital ER, and Sue told me tonight that she used to be a mummer in the Greater Overbrook String Band. Welcome, Sue.
Hello, everybody. Well, before I begin my story, I want to make a disclaimer statement, one that's very important. This is my nursing story. I do make reference to sexual abuse, domestic violence, and drug abuse. I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia in a row home during the 70s. There were plenty of kids running around during the summer, block parties with lots of live music and everybody dancing in the street, having a great time. We played stickball. Sometimes we cut off the stick from an old broom and use a pimple ball. During the wicked winters, me and my friends would get together and grab our shovels, start shoveling the neighborhood. Sometimes we would do it for money. Money's always good. But yet sometimes we would also help the older neighbors because we knew the older neighbors couldn't do it. My father would curse because he had to put chains on the tires so he wouldn't get stuck or slide down the street. Though I seemed like other kids in my neighborhood, I really wasn't. By the time I was 5, I was being molested by my father. At the same time, I realized I was struggling in school. I couldn't concentrate. I was having difficulty memorizing. I felt different. I felt ashamed, not even realizing what I was ashamed of. When I was 10, we moved out of a row home in Northeast Philadelphia, and my parents bought a home near Nabisco. While the delicious smell of vanilla wafers lit up the neighborhood, I noticed my mother often complained of being tired. She was fatigued. She had trouble walking. She had trouble speaking, getting numbness in her legs and hands. She was eventually diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. My father was still taking advantage of me, and the beatings from my father got worse. Oh, the police were often called, but they said it was a domestic situation and I remained in the custody of my parents. A few years after living in the far Northeast, my parents divorced. My father didn't want to take care of my mother. Hell, he could barely take care of himself due to his ongoing drug abuse, which, by the way, had been going on since I can remember. My mother and I moved to a 1-bedroom apartment back in our old neighborhood in Frankfort Avenue and Ron Street. We didn't have much. I didn't have a bed. I slept on the sofa. I put my clothes in the closet because I didn't have a bureau. I became a parent to my mother at 12. I had to get up 2 hours before school, iron her clothes, make her tea, help her get dressed, walk her to the bus, make sure she'd get on the bus. And when I was done school at the end of the day, I come right home and repeat the same cycle. When I reached my senior year in high school, my father was hospitalized with AIDS. I wanted nothing to do with him. I had suffered enough sexual, physical, and mental abuse from him. So I never spoke to him again. I was 17. I dropped out of high school to continue caring for my mother. I did go back the next year. And once I graduated from high school, I attended Community College of Philadelphia because I knew getting an education was going to be my way out for a better life. Keep in mind, I still haven't told anyone about the physical or sexual abuse from my father and the neglect from my mother. While attending community college, I was having so much trouble with the science courses. I went to the professor and explained my problem. He directed me to speak to somebody from the disabilities office. Well, needless to say, I didn't know there was a disabilities office, and I didn't even think I had a disability. I knew that I was having trouble learning, but I just didn't think I had a disability. Well, the person I spoke with at the disabilities office didn't seem surprised at what I was telling her. I noticed that she knew exactly what to say to calm me down because I really was sobbing in her chair. She suggested I get tested to see where my weaknesses are and ways to overcome them. This was the first time I opened up about what happened to me during my childhood. I was told by the disabilities person I wasn't sure how to choose a career. You see, the fear of failing was greater than the fear of doing nothing with my life. And that I couldn't tolerate. I've always been told by teachers I was friendly, outgoing, but that was to hide the shame I felt by not being smart. And I wanted to create a facade so that nobody would know what was going on at home and the shame that I felt. I was determined not to let. I did get tested at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. My full IQ score and my working short-term memory was far below average, but my verbal comprehension was tested at average. I was determined not to let the results interfere with me getting an education. Once I came to the harsh reality that I wasn't going to get through the nursing science courses, I decided just to complete my education at the Philadelphia Community College with an associate's degree. Then I transferred to LaSalle University, where I earned a bachelor's degree. Along with my degree, I earned a national standing when I scored a 76 on the National Registry of Emergency Medical Technician state boards. You see, I didn't earn a nursing degree due to educational limitations, but I now work alongside the smart, trusted, and educated nurses as an emergency room tech. I'm compassionate. I'm willing to be there for anybody that needs it. I have an abundant amount of empathy, sympathy, and compassion for people. Along with those qualities, my strong will and tenacity helped reshape my career into a job that I'm proud of, while utilizing the credentials I did earn. I really enjoy working as an emergency room tech. And you know what? I learned a few things along the way. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy mentoring paramedic students, and I enjoy training new staff. I am fortunate to work with some wonderful nurses who have inspired me to apply what I've learned, exemplify what I already know, and to get past personal obstacles to help others. My hope for my story is to inspire others and to let them know that there are many pathways to reach your dream. This is mine.
Ah, lovely, Sue. Thank you so much for sharing. I know there's a lot that went into this, and I think people listening at home got a lot out of it. I'm curious, do you have any particular advice or guidance for someone who's facing personal obstacles in their professional path?
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help. The help is out there. As long as you're willing to ask, as long as you're willing to recognize it, it is there. Take advantage of it.
It's big.
Not always free.
No. But I love that you said that. That's a lesson that a lot of people need to hear. Many people need to hear time and again. But yeah, you said it yourself. Your will and tenacity got you where you are. So, Sue, thanks so much for sharing tonight.
Thank you, Neil.
Okay, folks, bringing us home tonight, it is Jill Whitcraft, another wonderful alum from the Penn School of Nursing. She wanted me to say hi to her mom, who's watching from her house. Hi, Jill's mom. We're glad that you're here. Welcome, Jill. We're going to pause real quick while we unmute Jill and get that going again. Jill's mom, if you're out there, hello again. And potentially hello to my mother, who I believe is watching tonight at home. We are working on things backstage. While I have this moment, I'm going to shout out my dear friend and colleague, Alyssa Alduki, who is managing our stream tonight, and really appreciate everything that they do for us. Alyssa is part of the First Person Arts team and has just been a stellar collaborator with Penn Nursing, and just getting a lot of things happening, going behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. And Jill is ready, and we're going to come back.
Is this good? We're okay? Okay. So for a while, and for maybe about 100 years in this country, we all here collectively let men decide how we labor. Let men decide how we permit ourselves and each other to labor. I still haven't figured out how that really happened exactly. It never made any sense to me. Because, like my girl Sojourner Truth said, something like, it's between God and a woman. Man ain't got nothing to do with it. Except they kind of do, don't they? At least sometimes. So as my shift on labor and delivery started that night, Sarah was mine, my patient. She was laboring alone. The baby's dad was away on business somewhere, and she had gone into labor and had to head to the hospital by herself. She was soon ripe and completely dilated, ready to start pushing, with the nice, powerful, regular contraction pattern. For a little while there, I was doing hip contractions, and she'd scream harder. So they were good, strong contractions for a while. And then she got to complete, means she's fully dilated and ready to start pushing. And she just completely stopped progressing. The contractions just stopped. I couldn't find anything wrong anywhere. Baby was head down, no hands or feet in the way. She appeared to be pushing in an effective way. She was very cooperative and willing to do anything I asked. Baby just wasn't descending. So I kept making suggestions, right? Moving her around into different positions, walking, squatting, hands and knees. Baby wasn't moving. There was nothing in the way. There was no reason. It just wasn't happening on my time schedule. I remember reminding myself, we're so fine. Baby's heart rate looks great. Nothing's in the way. Nobody is stuck. We just need to be patient. That's why we call this labor. Because it's hard work. I put her on the edge of the rocking chair so she could still move but be supported and gave her a minute. I backed off into a corner so she could relax and feel alone in the dark, waiting for my next good idea to come, trying to think of what was best, what she needed next. So here's the truest sentence I can say about labor. Always, women need to feel completely supported, unafraid, and surrounded by whatever their version of a positive family is. Or sometimes maybe they need to feel the exact opposite. Very focused, deep down in a black primal hole in the dark, turned inward all alone. Both are exactly what they need, but you never know who's going to be who until you get to that doorstep. There is actual old-fashioned bubbling magic at work here. Brain chemistry that even the most modern science doesn't really understand yet. Sometimes all you need to make a baby appear is dark and silence. Some women just need quiet, intense, internal focus. You just need to catch the baby before it hits the floor. That's how some women are wired. And that ends in a raucous success with a wet baby in my hands. But some women actually need you to scream in their face to get busy and push that little kumquat out now. What they need is your focused intensity and energy. But sometimes what actually helps is perspective. Remember back in the day when we used to ride around in airplanes for fun, to travel for pleasure or visit relatives? Remember that? Seems crazy now, right? The captains of the planes I used to get off of, so sick to my stomach, but happy to be alive, I'd thank them as I passed for not murdering us all effectively. They'd say, "You're welcome. It was a beautiful day for a flight." And actually, it was. I was just too worried about puking on my shoes, or worse yet, puking on my neighbor's shoes, to notice and enjoy. See? Perspective. The point is, it's not always a beautiful day for a flight. But it is always a beautiful day to have a baby. And that's what I always tried to help my laborers remember, that they aren't alone, that they have my company and they will to the bitter end, and that this is actually what it takes to make a baby, what they're going through right now. And that it really is okay for them to puke on my shoes. They're made of rubber. I'll hose them off in the driveway before I walk in the door tonight. Puke away if that's what it takes. Plus, as an added bonus, you can actually puke your baby out. I've seen it happen. It's not at all pretty, but it works. So back to my patient that we are not calling stuck, the one I left alone on the edge of the rocking chair in the dark, the one who nothing was working for. You want to know what happened? The absolute most predictable of all things. No, not a C-section. Her partner finally showed up and ran over to her in the dark and kneeled down in front of her, sitting in that rocking chair, and threw his arms around her. And then they were both sobbing and rocking and sobbing together. Now, I hadn't been doing this for very long, but I knew enough to reach for the gloves because the hug lasted all of 90 seconds. And then she had one mammoth contraction. And I had to shove my way between them to catch the baby's head before it hit the floor. She just needed him. At least her hormones did. And I am in no way saying that this is the best or the only way to have a baby. It was just a pretty way to end the night. And it just goes to show you that labor will do what labor wants to do when labor wants to do it. And after everything, after all my good nursing interventions, I probably really mattered very little. It was all mom and dad, which is actually our very most optimal outcome. See, at least that time, I think man had something to do with it. And I think Sojourner would have been okay with that too. Thank you. That was fun.
Jill, I'm so glad you had fun with that.
Sorry.
I know I had fun with it as well, and I'm sure folks at home did too. A theme in your story is anticipation and expectation of certain things, and you kind of know what's going to happen. What surprises you still in this work?
I got to tell you, that is just not true. You really don't ever really know what's going to happen.
Okay.
Until you've got that baby in your hands, it's still a crapshoot.
All right. Okay.
It's true.
Appreciate that transparency. So, Jill, thank you for ending our evening with that lovely story. I'm going to close things out in a minute here with Marion, but thank you to all of our storytellers this evening. This was a really tremendous set of perspectives and stories from different parts of careers, different angles within careers. It's been just a wonderful journey, as it so often is, putting together our annual Penn Nursing Story Slam. And Marion, you want to join me on screen for a moment?
Hey, Neil.
Great. Any closing remarks from you?
Phew, every year. These storytellers, they get me every year. I mean, seriously, they made me laugh. They made me a bit teary-eyed. It was everything I expected and more, and they were just incredible. Blown away.
Yeah, indeed.
So I hope these stories inspired you all and encourage you all to be more creative in your daily lives as well. Neil, if you're all right, I'm just going to go into my closing remarks unless you have anything else you wanted to say.
I just want to express my own personal thanks to Marion, you, Alyssa, all the storytellers, everybody at FEA, Dean, Tony, and the viewers. So thanks to everybody.
Yeah, nurses most definitely have the best stories, and I'm so glad you are all here with us tonight to hear them. Nurses, please keep telling your stories. The world needs to hear them now more than ever. Before we close, I would just like to once again thank all of you for attending, all of our storytellers for sharing their stories, our sponsors, Sandy and Joe Sandberg, Penn Nursing, Penn Medicine, and the Penn Biotech Commons, as well as, of course, all of you at First Person Arts for all of your help with this event tonight. This event would also not be possible without the help of many of my colleagues in our marketing, communications, and special events offices. Thanks to all of you, as well as my colleagues, Dr. Terry Richmond, Dr. Rosemary Palomano, Dean Tony, Jesse Reich, Flory Vanek, and Christine Hockenberry from Penn Nursing and Penn Medicine. Thank you all. And with that, keep sharing your stories, stay safe, and have a good evening.